Well guys, we did it. 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and along with dyeing my hair silver and doing a 24-hour live stream, it's time to make good on one more promise. So yeah, you're getting a gooey Draw My Life video. Now, I know, I've been super lacking in terms of actual videos lately, and that's something that I'll be fixing in January, but with it being the end of 2016, and with the big milestone and all, I figured this was a good time to do a little reflecting. So without any more delay, my name is Stan, and here's my Draw My Life. I was born in Scarborough, Ontario in July 1993 as the first child in my family, and from what I've been told, it was a pretty nice summer day. At the time, and even now, my dad works with his hands as an auto body repairman, which basically means he makes busted cars look new again. My mom, on the other hand, has always sort of done receptionist and office work, but I'll get more into that later. Anyways, I've always been a pretty adventurous child, with the height of my curiosity reaching its peak during my third Christmas, where I snuck away from my mom and younger brother and climbed up to the roof to help my dad with the Christmas lights. Yeah, that definitely could have ended up pretty bad, but luckily with the help of a few neighbors, I survived the ordeal and gave my parents a story they continue to tell to this day. Anyways, it was around this time that I discovered video games at my babysitter's, and after a few rounds of games like Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario World on her old SNES, I was pretty much hooked. Eventually, I received a brand new N64 along with a copy of the original Super Smash Bros. For my 6th birthday, and despite being too young to unlock any of the secret characters minus Jigglypuff, it was here that I really started to become a gamer. Now, whether it's because I was the oldest sibling or because my parents didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, I was also sort of late to the party when it came to childhood fads. There were things like Pogs and Crazy Bones that I missed out on completely, but the one that I eventually got into, albeit way after my friends, was a little series called Pokemon. It sounds funny now, but I remember all of the kids at my babysitter's going crazy for the TV show every afternoon, and I just had zero interest. I mean, who would want to watch a giant turtle take on a giant fire-breathing dragon thing, right? But of course, despite my initial apprehensions, eventually I did fall in love with the series just in time for the second generation of games, and to this day opening up a Game Boy Color along with Pokemon Silver is still my happiest Christmas memory. Anyways, my childhood was pretty normal by all accounts. I was definitely more of a gamer and TV watcher than my brother, who played multiple sports, but I was pretty active with all of the adventures me and my friends would go on in our small neighborhood, so it never really bothered me much. At the time, I was also pretty good at school speeches. Yeah, you know those things that every kid hates more than detention? Well, even though I hated being in front of everyone, I had a knack for speaking to an audience, and in a weird way, this skill that I hated would eventually become invaluable later on, so I guess those dreaded speeches weren't all that bad. Of course, not long after this, the puberty monster visited me, and pretty much any confidence I'd gained doing public speaking dissolved in an instant, as I not only got pretty chubby, but I also received glasses and really bad acne to boot. Thanks, hormones! In all seriousness though, the worst part of my middle school days were how instead of just doing the things I loved, I started letting insecurity get to me, and I really just wanted to fit in, and of course, being a preteen who likes Nintendo games definitely was not in, at least at the time. I gave up my Game Boy for gym shorts and ended up picking classes for high school based on what my friends were doing rather than what I actually wanted to take, which I guess brings us to another big part of my life, high school. To be perfectly honest, I didn't really do much for the first 2 years of high school. My friends from public school had started getting into things like drugs and partying, but despite my wanting to fit in, I just never really got on board with it. So eventually they left me behind and I spent a lot of time alone, which sounds kind of sad, but at the same time, this is when I discovered a little site called YouTube. I actually remember first watching Philip DeFranco because I saw he was wearing an Atlanta Thrashers jersey in the thumbnail, which, of course, as a teenage boy in Canada, I had to click. Despite these weird origins, through watching him and a few other channels like Dave Days and Shay Carl, I realized that anyone, including kids, could upload to the site, and so that summer I created my own YouTube channel and started really getting into making short, silly videos with a few friends in my neighborhood. Of course, that channel never took off, but through many failed attempts, I reignited my love for filmmaking, and throughout high school, I eventually became known as the video guy. In fact, me and a few friends even made a silly video for a class project that would go on to get over 200,000 views on YouTube, which was jaw-dropping at that time. However, high school wasn't completely without its pitfalls, and towards the end of my last year, I'd become a pretty big target for some bullying, for a few reasons that were partially of my own making. I won't go into too much detail, but basically I wasn't the greatest of friends, and I said some stuff that, though wasn't very nice, got mistranslated and blown way out of context, and even though a bit of it was deserved, it still really sucked having to be all smiles when you could see people pointing and laughing at you through the halls. Although I did learn an invaluable lesson about honesty and trust, so at least the experience wasn't meaningless. Either way, it was also at this time that my mom got laid off from her cozy management position due to the recession, and because of this, my family didn't have the money to get me into university, which sucked because throughout all of high school, I'd studied hard and gotten straight A's. So as my few remaining friends went off to college, I stayed home and worked at my local Walmart, which of course only amplified my insecurities, and I sort of fell into a depression where I would sleep in until 3 p.m. and never leave my room. Now, although I had some dark thoughts and was at my absolute lowest in terms of confidence, I will say that as lost as I was, I never considered anything too drastic, mostly because I was at least working at the time, which got me out of my room once in a while. It was also during this lonely time that I bought a 3DS and started reigniting my love of gaming now that I wasn't being judged by my peers. And it was sort of through gaming that I befriended a dude named Connor who also worked at Walmart. Over the next few years, I got to know him and his friends a lot better, and after spending a few months in Alberta with my aunt and uncle, in order to make some decent non-Walmart money, we decided to start a YouTube channel just as I was entering college. Anyways, it was around college that I started regaining my confidence by doing extracurricular stuff as well as working out with my buddy Rob, and by the end of the 2-year course, I had a diploma, a girlfriend, and even a fancy new marketing job thanks to a great mentor of mine. On top of this, RandomTens, that channel me and Connor made, had taken off a bit, and I started making a lot of friends online like Oddsauce and Royboy140. However, my fancy marketing job turned out to be a thing of nightmares, as I quickly learned that the owner of the company, though a genius, approached things very differently than I did. We never really got along, and every day there I was an absolute stress case. Working a 9 to 5, doing meaningless work, then having your superior come in once a week to tell you everything was wrong was driving me insane, and after an incredible trip to Japan with my best friend Brett, aka Neon, I realized that I needed to do something else, and that's when my full attention went into YouTube, and crazy enough, things actually started to take off a bit. Eventually though, our lead marketing figure left the company at my day job, and being next in line, I was offered a much better but far more stressful position, and I turned them down. See, as good as the money would have been, and as much as I knew many of my peers would kill for that sort of position so young, I didn't want to stop doing YouTube, which I knew would have to happen if I were to take on such a hefty role. So I graciously declined their offer, and a few weeks later, I was given my walking papers. That was spring of this year, and of course since then I found another job, albeit part-time, and put more energy into YouTube and of course streaming. And as terrifying as that decision was, so far I can definitely say it was for the better. I mean, yeah, it can suck seeing your friends and classmates buying their first homes or getting married, knowing that I'm so far away from those things, but at the same time, they'll also never know what it's like to have people like you in their corner. Folks who support them through the good and the bad, through weeks with PC issues and when they don't actually upload a video in over a month. It's because of you guys and everything you do that I know that decision wasn't a mistake, because now I get to live out my dream job and make amazing friends along the way. From talented guys like Arcane Toaster and Retrotator to other YouTubers like Stat and the Two Dans, every day's a new adventure, and I went from the kid whose phone never rang to the guy who has to take a break from it so he doesn't go crazy from all of the love. Now sure, I'm still sort of lost on what the next step is in terms of growing up, and of course a silver play button doesn't mean I'm set for life, but making content for you guys and talking to you on stream helps me forget about all that for a little bit, and makes me want to keep aiming for the stars. I guess the most important lesson I can share, as cliche as it sounds, is to always follow your dreams and to pivot when people tell you no. Because as hard as it can be and as many sacrifices as you may have to make, dreams can come true. And thanks to all of you, this channel is proof of that. So here's to 200,000 and an even better year ahead. And as I always say, happy hunting, baby rhinos. And thank you for everything.